Well, Chris Tomlin, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Oh, so good to be with you, man. Thank you so much. This is great to spend a minute just chatting and talking about worship and all the things already. It's
I'm,
good to catch up.
I'm so honoured to do this. I was saying just before we press record, I first was introduced to you late 1999, 2000, somewhere in that window at a festival in the UK. And I think I've been doing this podcast for 7 seasons, and we finally managed to find time to get you on, which is great.
And you're in Austin, Texas, and
I am.
that's where I used to live, and that was a big party. I planted a church there, and so
Yes,
that's a good part of my life was in where you are now. So yeah, our paths have crossed a couple times now.
they have
Cool.
probably lots of mutual friends along the way, which is amazing. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And most of them would have a similar accent to mine and not yours, but there we go.
Hey, but now that you're in Austin, you need to come my way with the accent.
Do you know
Okay,
what?
work on
My
it.
my children are already there, particularly my 8-year-old daughter. We were speaking to friends.
You're like, please, God, no, no.
We were speaking to friends at the weekend about, oh my goodness, Kaya's accent has fully migrated. But another mutual friend of ours, Matt Redmond, I was talking to him, and they actually pay their children annual bonus if they retain their English accent at the end of every year. So.
That's so mad.
I thought
That's
that's a
so mad. He
great
can't give in.
idea.
He can't give in. I know.
Which is great. Well, Chris, thank you for your time today. I know that you've had a really busy weekend. I want to start by asking you about yesterday. And for anybody that hasn't seen the news and social media this morning, you had the privilege of opening up the Charlie Kirk Memorial yesterday. How was that for you? Tell us a little bit about your experience yesterday.
Yeah, thanks for asking that. And I'm really happy to talk about it. Honored to be a part of that. Honored to be a part of that moment. That's it. I feel like there's an awakening moment in our nation. I feel like there is a around the world. Really, there were some moments heard around the world yesterday that I think will reverberate um, for a long time. And walking into that, honestly, I was kind of like a lot of fear and trembling. I mean,
Right.
I didn't know what, I was kind of kicking off the memorial,
Yeah.
opening the memorial, and that was my position. And Erica Kirk had reached out to our team and said, "How great is our God" was one of Charlie's songs, and sorry, and he, we want to sing that song, and I thought, what an honor. I was like, well, yeah, I'll get there. I was on tour the night before
Wow.
across the other side of the country, and I said, yeah, I'd love to. I'd be honored. And so I'm walking into this, can imagine into the stadium, really not knowing
Mm.
and how this is going to go. I don't know how the memorial is going to go. I don't know the tone of it. I just know that what I was there to do is to point people to the reality that Charlie's in at the moment, and the reality of that all of us have to be reminded of that there is a greater kingdom that we're a part of, and to be able to stand there and to sing these words, above all thrones and powers and positions and dominions in a place where the most powerful people in the world are literally sitting in front of me.
Mm.
Um, and just point people to the name above all names, and I just had that moment of clarity where I thought, I just want to speak that scripture over this place. And so I just shared, and God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every name, that at the name of Jesus, every knee will bow. And I was thinking, that's my job here, is to point people there. And so for me, it was the honor of a life, to be able to stand in that moment for my nation and for around the world. And then when Erica, I mean, there was everybody, I was floored at how many people are just boldly proclaiming Jesus. Like, like you probably, like many people, like, what is happening?
Yeah.
What is this real? And like, what is happening? And but just sharing the Jesus over and over and over, and it was so not politics. It was
Right.
so Jesus, and I was like, yes. And then for Erica to say those words, I forgive
Yeah.
the person who killed my husband. I've been saying it. That's the word. That's the words heard around the world.
Mm.
That is spoke more than anything anybody could ever say. And that was like this is what the essence of. This is the essence of the gospel. This is the essence of what this is all about. Is only the Spirit of God could do that through her, and that's not man made. That's not a human can't do that in their strength, right? And I was to be a part of it is you know, uh, honestly, talking from worship leaders to worship leaders, you walk into things, you're like, I don't know how this is going to go, but all I know is I got to represent. I need to point people to Jesus, and that's what we do, right? That's what the place that God's given us to do as leaders, and you take whatever moments come and walk into them, and I was just so honored.
Yeah. I, I love your reflection on that. I think we were talking about this in the break room this morning with a couple of my friends, and I think there's times as worship leaders where you're asked to lead worship in different environments, and you're not always sure of the approach or the tone or how to
Yeah,
posture yourself for leading. But just that idea of, well, it's scriptural, isn't it? Like when I'm high and lifted up, I'll draw all men onto
yeah,
myself, and that
yeah,
promise is almost like the essence of exactly how you led that moment
yeah.
yesterday. Are you sensing something really pivotal happening at the moment in the nation through events like
Yes.
this and for moments?
Yeah, I am. I really am. We've been doing concerts this past week.
Yeah,
We started our tour, and buddy, it was so different.
right.
I mean, I just felt so like I think obviously it's very raw in the nation right
Yeah,
now, but it's people are just I feel like so wanting to connect with God in such a more powerful way and in such a more real way. I just feel that, just sense it as leading. So there's a shift, there's an awakening, and there's so many that have listening to this that have been praying for that
mm,
for so long. There's so many pastors out there, so many men and women of faith who've been on their knees praying for awakening in our nation around the world, and it just felt like a spark, man. It felt like a shift. It felt like these are days of boldness
yeah,
that boldness that just happened. Like, what is this? And I'll just tell a brief story quickly. I was in just the night before, I was out on tours in Richmond, Virginia,
okay.
and I got an Uber, and I'm a pretty normal Uber guy. I don't talk. I just get in the back and
Yes.
take me where I'm going. And the guy starts talking to me, and he starts telling me a story, and I could tell he just, tell he's a bit, maybe he had a rougher life, could just felt that. And he just said how he'd done a lot of service in the military, been in the military and was ex-military now, retired and out of it, and been in a lot of battle and things like that. And we were just talking a bit, and then he got to the question, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm a singer, and what kind of music? And so, I was like, well, I said, this is what I sing about. And he turned around and looked at me, and he's like, man, I'm getting baptized this Sunday. And I was like, really? I mean, it's not what I thought was coming,
Yeah.
I said, really? That's awesome. I said, man, that's so good. And then the next thing out of his mouth, he goes, yeah, man, that what happened to Charlie really woke me up.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my goodness. And I had not, of course, I had not
Yeah.
said, hey, I'm going to play at this.
Mm,
I had any connection to that. And it's just going around, it was one of those moments. It was really amazing timing for me getting on a plane that was going to fly through the middle of the night to do
yeah.
this memorial,
Yeah.
and I just talked to just a guy in an Uber who had just given his life to Christ, because I was like, okay, um, God's working in people's lives.
Yeah. And the kindness of God just to place that person as your Uber driver, just
Yeah.
almost as your personal encouragement of like, this is
Yes,
what we're
right.
doing and this is why we're doing and this is the
Exactly.
moment that we're leaning into.
Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, Chris, I want to congratulate you on the new album, The King is Still the King. It feels
Yeah.
like such a timely message, even in context of what we're talking about
Right.
now. This is album number 18 for you.
18.
That's amazing. How does this
Yeah.
album feel? Do you get tired once you get to album number 18? How do you find the freshness in this, and what does this one mean that other albums haven't meant to you?
It feels so fresh.
Okay.
It feels so fresh. I can't believe it. And I think it's the longest I've gone. First of all, it's the longest I've ever gone a stretch without putting out new music.
Okay.
And I think was fortunately, because God allowed me to have a song like "Holy Forever,"
Yeah.
where He just can't. I can't put in anything else because no one cares. And so it's like, so I'm gonna wait. So it's been 3 years since we released "Holy Forever," and so
Okay.
it's like, okay. So I've been working on this new music. I've been writing songs, and I felt just a real fresh approach at this. I wanted, it's so intentional. Everything's intentional. And then this song that kind of became the anchor of the record, which is called "Still the King," and it has this line in the song that just says, "For the blood is still the blood, and the King is still the King."
Yeah.
And I thought that's the whole story, man. That's it. And so when you look at so everything is kind of wrapped around. That's kind of the anchor of the album, and building the album around that line. The blood is still the blood, and the king is still the king. Even if you look at the cover of the record,
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the cover.
it's got this mark, this image of these. Well, the background is kind of a montage of the world. It's of the landscapes of the world. It's the ocean. I thought, I'd like to put together like a montage of the earth, and
Yeah,
like the ocean, the mountains, the forest, the trees, the highlands, all of these beautiful, the river and the desert, and smash it all together. And then and then I had this idea of this crown. I've never seen this before, but I thought I'd love to have the crown of thorns wrapped around the crown of King of Kings.
yeah,
And I thought that's the blood is still the blood, and the king is still the king. And what if we don't put the king is still the king on the album cover? Just that crown,
yeah,
that says that. And when Jesus was on this earth, right, he wore a crown of he wore Jesus really wore two crowns. He wore a crown of thorns,
hmm,
of mockery, of shame, of the shedding of blood, the reason we have forgiveness, the reason that we have any hope in this world, because what Jesus did on the cross, which is, I always say, the centrality of worship is the cross. We can never go too far in our worship sets without bringing people to the cross. It's always the essence of it all. And yet today he wears the crown of King of Kings, right? And so I wanted those crowns to be kind of represented together, and that kind of telling the whole story of the gospel. And so there's so much intention in this record. And so I have stories of every song, but just from the start of it to how good it is, opening with the Psalms, just a song of the Psalms,
yeah,
just singing those Psalm, Psalm 98, how good it is. Psalm 92, how good it is to praise the name of the Lord is. In the Psalm 113, from the rising of the sun to the setting of the same, the name of the Lord shall be praised. All those beautiful psalms, that call to praise, to ending the album with "This is my Father's world,"
yeah.
and saying the very last thing we're saying is, He reigns forever on the throne. He reigns, He reigns. This is my Father's world. That's the King is still the King, right? Every
Mm.
moment is like intentional. From this album's got songs that are titled with emojis
Yes.
to with these musical pieces that are connecting the dots of the music throughout the record, um, that were very intentional how this marries into this next song. And
Yeah.
so I know people don't listen to the records start to finish, but if they do, it's intentional in that way. And so those kind of things made it just, I just can't, it gave me a fresh approach, gave me like an excitement about,
Mm.
okay, you know what, I feel like, you can get to record 18, you're like, I think I've written everything I can write, and like say it and everything. But then God gives you, this fresh wind and new songs, and
Yeah.
new ways of saying it. And so I'm very excited for people to discover this, because there's so many different ideas of songs in there.
It really is. I think that's a unique skill of worship leaders and songwriters that can put together an album that takes you on a whole journey. And it's,
Hmm.
yes, you're right. People listen to individual songs and will grab,
Yeah,
especially like worship leaders, are going to grab resources.
yeah,
But there is something powerful and special about listening to the journey of an album and
yes,
following it through, the way that art was created. And I think this
yeah,
is one of the albums that do that so well, that you need to experience it that way
yeah,
as
yeah.
well.
Yeah, thank you. And it's there's so many songs on there that I've always said, and I love that. The obviously the people we're talking to today are my people, right?
Yeah.
This is what it's about for me. But it's always been about, I'm trying to write songs that are really simple for the church to sing.
Yeah.
Like, I want to find those songs that you can
Yeah.
just easily, quickly grab onto. I think about Jesus Saves. That song has been,
Yeah.
bro. It is, you talking about surprise. You get out there this last week, and you get out there and you think you know the songs that are
Yeah.
going to resonate, and then you
You're right.
play a song and you're like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. Jesus Saves has been the one I thought, and honestly, it's between us talking and everybody else who's listening, I guess. But I thought that's a good song. I like it. It's a nice
Yeah.
song. There's parts of it I really like. It's not changed the world. And then I get out there and I'm like, I think this may change the world. I sing it, and people just, when we get to that, He did what I could not do, where there was,
Yeah.
they start shouting it down. I'm like, no one has heard this song. Not anybody in this place has heard it,
Right.
and yet they're just shouting it down. I'm like, okay, what is happening? And
Yeah.
you get to those moments, and simple like that to, he has done great things. I That song is just Psalm 103, and I just thought always wanted those songs where I just grab a guitar, and I don't need a band, and I don't need a production, and I just need a guitar or a piano, and I can just sing this with my congregation. I've always looked for those songs.
Yeah.
That's one of those to me on this record, and yeah, so many. We can get into so many of the different ones, but it's a lot of special moments.
So let me ask you this before we get into some of the unique songs and the stories or journeys behind them. I love that imagery, and you talk about God's creation, mountains, oceans, highlands. And I read this line from you in looking at the album. You said, sometimes we overcomplicate things with pedals, plugins, and all the gear. And most of us listening to this love all the gear, we love the plugins, we love all the plugins. And then you said, but for this one I went back to the beginning and I used the sounds that God made: wind, rain, thunder, waves, birds. Tell me about the intentionality of that, and tell me about, is there any irony in the way that you then use technology to record and create those moments? I want to get into
There you
that.
go. You got to have a lot of the great gear to get that out to
Yeah, right,
everybody,
yeah.
right? But people know what I'm saying. Sometimes, it's just, I just had this thought, especially it was my father's world. I was thinking
I
about
love
that,
that, yeah.
and I was thinking about that lyric. It really just moved me. It's the very most moving song on the record for me. And as I ended the album with this song for a reason, it's one of the great hymns of our faith, right? And when you read those lyrics, especially as a songwriter, you're like, oh, gosh, I don't need to be. I don't need to be writing songs. That is a song. I mean, just the way it's so beautifully written, and of the speaking of my father's world. And so I thought, what if we create some music that really speaks to that? And what is my father's world? What does it sound like? And so we just went in there over and over, and edits and after edits, and trying to figure out how does this mash together, putting the thunder and the rain and the wind. And I wanted to hear little birds every once in a while, and just like, what, people go, what is it? Was that a bird? I think that was a bird. And and that was, and just like maybe just a gentle ocean, not a big wave, but just like a gentle ocean wave rolling in. It kind of comes across the music sometimes, just like, oh, and people may not even notice it, but it's in there, and just like that. This is my father's world. This is the world that God made. This is what the guy who wrote the hymn, this Presbyterian minister in the late 1800s, he would say this. He would go on walks, and he would take a walk, and he would tell his wife, hey, honey, I'm going out for a walk, and I'm going to see my father's world.
Wow.
And he would write in his journal what he would think when he'd go on these walks. And after he died, she found this journal, and it was 16 verses of this hymn that we sing today. We only sing 4 or 5 verses.
Wow.
But it had 16 verses of things like that he wrote, like, this is my father's world, and to my listening ear, all music sings, and all nature sings, and round me rings the music of the spheres. Where do you think Coldplay got the music of the spheres
Right.
title? From this hymn.
Right.
This is my father's world. It's like he just speaking to, man, just God's creation, and that I think like most people, I'm really moved personally, my own relationship with God when I'm really detached from the technology of this world and moved into the reality of this world of what God has made. And that's what I was kind of saying in some of that.
And again, it's one of those songs that you and your team have crafted that there's listening to music and there's listening to music, right? There's the kind of laying down, eyes closed, fully engaged in listening to music. But it's so surrounding, it's so all encapsulating. You get drawn in, you feel like you're right in the middle of the music and the song, that you experience it as much as you listen to it. How did you pull that off? How did you do that?
Speaking of tech geeks out there, speaking of going back to techs and pedals, if you love Atmos and you listen to Atmos, we do an extreme mix for Atmos, which will be coming out later. Like for that one, My Father's World, there's Atmos mixes that people like to listen to, but then we did like an extreme one where you feel like it's raining on top of your head.
Wow.
The wind is coming behind you, like all the things. I wanted people to like kind of experience that. And so we just kind of went after it and just, and so, but it's even in the normal mix you hear when you're streaming it, it's like it's beautiful and it captures you in. But I think the lyric moves you so much that the lyric of that song really just share it, explains it so much, and gives you such a picture. You know, when we talk about songwriting, I've always you're trying to help people see
Hmm.
really more than they sing. I always say the more people see, the more they sing, right? The more you can help people see it.
Yeah.
And that lyric, you just see it. I mean, it just so beautifully written that it's like your heart, your mind are open to seeing the glory of God. And that's and I think that's what probably moves you more than the music. You know, the lyric
Yeah.
is so written so beautifully. And I can say that because I didn't write a word of it except except the little refrain. He reigns, you know. And I'll just say it too. It's fun to say on this interview because I get that all the time on hymns. You know, most of my records I've put a hymn on there,
Right.
and if I've always had this little thing of from the Wonderful Cross to Amazing Grace to other things. Just I don't know, just adding this little refrain to it, and I've gotten lots of hate mail over it in my life. but um, but it's just something I've loved, and so with my Father's World, I was just thinking of that, and I was writing, and I was sharing that with my buddies Reuben Morgan, which a lot of people will know, and Ben Fielding
Yeah.
and Jason Ingram. We were writing some songs, we were writing other songs, and I just brought that idea. I was like, this hymn, and we just started just worshiping God, just singing that He reigns forever on the throne, and like that's why the record ends that way.
I think that's been a hallmark of your contribution to the church as well, Chris. It's not just been a writer of great songs, but a carrier of great songs. And I think you've exposed songs that maybe people wouldn't have heard or wouldn't have encountered if you hadn't have leveraged your platform to carry songs. And I think
Thank you for saying that.
there's obviously something there where you've been able to champion other songwriters and other songs. When you hear something, you go, "That's special," and that deserves.
Thank you for
more,
saying
and you've
that.
been able to do that. Tell me about that a little.
Yes, thank you for saying that, man. Because I mean, every record I have tried to put a song on there that I have really nothing to do with songwriting. I love
Right.
writing songs, but I'm always there's always these songs that kind of find me.
Okay.
I'm not really looking for it, but I'm like, okay, this is that. I'll to give you examples. I'm playing in Ireland. I'm playing at the O2 in Belfast,
Yeah.
way back in the day. You know, I talk about those early days.
Yeah.
And this band is opening up for me. They're named Blue Tree, and I'm like, that's a funny name. You know, I just like I don't know, and I don't know. And they're opening the night, and they start singing this. You're the God of this city.
Yeah.
And I'm just standing, and all I can think is, what is this? And I know we're going on a world tour with Passion coming up, and I'm thinking, I want to sing this in every city. I don't know what this
Wow.
song is, and I ran to met them backstage, grabbed them backstage, like, whatever song that was, can you send me a demo of that? Because I want to sing this wherever we're going around this world. My wife sends me a text one day I'm out on tour, and she's like, Chris, you need to hear this song. My wife's never sent me a song ever. She sent
Okay.
me one song in her life. She sent me a text, and she goes, you need to hear this song. I think it'll mean a lot to you. And I was like, okay. And and I'm, you know, and you're like, duh, when you hear it, but it's like, and I get home, and I was like, and she said, did you listen to that song I sent you? I was like, no, babe, I forgot. I totally forgot. And she goes, well, you're listening to it right now. And she plays it, and it's Good Good Father.
Wow.
And it's Pat Barrett singing this. It's kind of little demo of it. And she goes, yeah, I've did this Bible study, and somebody played it, and I was like, what is that? And she goes, I wanted to send this to you. And I called Pat immediately because I didn't know. I was just listening to the demo. I didn't know who was
Yeah.
singing it. I found out it was Pat. I called. I was like, bro, what is this song? This is gonna help people all over the world.
Yeah.
You know, this gonna can. And then I was singing it to my girls every night. And then I thought, I want to record this. I
Wow.
wanted people to hear this. And I called Pat. I was like, can I record this song? He goes, man, I goes, the timing. This is crazy. He goes, I would love for you to record this. And I was like, and every record I could go down the line, Indescribable
Yeah.
was a song I did not write a friend of mine said, listen to this. And I was like, oh my goodness, is there people I want to, and so on this record, Still the King is,
Yep.
that's the song I did not write. And I
Okay.
heard it from this church, Seven Hills, leading it. And they sang, they're playing a lot of new songs, and they sang, for the blood is still the blood, and the king is still the king. And I'm like,
Wow.
knocked out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if that knocks me out, that's going to knock other people
Yeah.
out. You know, if I feel it that way, and I've never heard this song, and it just hits me like a lightning bolt, I'm like, and so I went to those guys, and I was like, hey, that song's special. Working on a new record. Could I think about recording that. This is going to be that song for me that comes from a different place. And so all along the way, I've always tried to find those songs that mean something to me, hit me in such a special way that I could. And every one of those I've recorded, I've always thought, if it means so much to me, if no one else gets it, that's fine.
Right.
But
Okay.
it really, really hits me in my heart in such a special way. And then with the hymns, have always tried to bring those hymns. Hymns have always been important to me. I grew up on the hymns, and I've always wanted that to be something that's in my music. And so, always finding a hymn that I can put out with people
Yeah.
that can put that forward again for people who, especially younger generation, who might listen to My Father's World and think, "Wow, Chris is a great songwriter." You know, I didn't know he could write lyrics like that. Well, I can't. I can't. And so, trying to find songs that are like, "Whoa," you know, and
Richness.
bring them to again to maybe people who are listening to me, or bring it into worship music, you know, maybe new to the church, and like, wow, what are these songs, right? That are so rich. We have such a incredible.
Yeah.
What other genre of music has this kind of history of music?
Right.
Nobody.
No.
We're talking. This is too. I mean, there's a song on this record called "The First Hymn." It goes back to the 1800 years ago. It's the earliest known hymn with musical notation. It's the earliest known song ever found in the church. It's in a vault in Oxford. It's a scrap of paper. This theologian came and historian came and said to me and Ben Fielding, "Would you help me resurrect this song?"
No
It's
way.
the earliest known song of the church outside of the Psalms.
Wow.
And it predates the doxology. And we have that kind of history
Yeah.
of songs
Yeah.
in our faith. And to think that we're singing a song on this album that 1800 years ago, some band of believers,
Yeah.
and obviously they sang a different melody,
Yeah.
and the melody was really strange to our ears, but singing the same words.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's an incredible thing that we have in our faith, right?
I was having this conversation with someone the other day, and I can't remember who, so I won't credit it correctly, but that they have noticed as they tour and as they lead worship that there's a hunger for new songs, but there's a real yearning for familiar and for old and for digging back into the richness of, and whether it's those songs of marked moments in people's life that there's a connection to them, or whether it's there was something in the returning to those songs. And they were saying that a lot of their set lists at the moment are this flip-flopping between something brand new and something that is treasured and familiar. Are you noticing that as you lead worship?
Oh my goodness, yes. And that's what anchors people, right? I've always tried to do that. I've always been mindful of that. I feel like that's something when I'm leading, I put together a night of worship, when I put together a set for church, I've always trying to anchor in something that the whole place is like, okay, this is we can anchor here, and introduce some new things, but always bring big, because music is so much. What we get to put before people is what they know of God and what they learn of God, and it's important. It's a responsibility that we're putting the songs before people that obviously are so rich and in helping people understand who God is and teach people the whole story. But what incredible responsibility! And I think it's right on, and it's amazing. I've been even going back in my. This is not that old, but like on this record, I put "You Are My King," "Amazing Love," "You Are My King." I mean, the record is called "The King Is Still the King," right? And I thought I'm going to dig back to OG in my world, and it was one of the first songs I started leading, when I was just in college. And a buddy of mine had written that song then in Texas, and this is came out of it came out of Texas, and we were doing these little youth camps and things like that. And it's a simple little song, and I was leading it, and I started leading it at Passion when Passion was early days, and I thought I want to go back to that song. Because one night I walked on stage in the encore, and I don't know, I just felt like I wanted to sing it. And I said, I don't know if anybody remembers this, but and I started, "I'm forgiven."
Yeah.
But, I mean, it was a whole nother level.
Yeah.
There were no words on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
There was and then people just started singing "Amazing Love, How Can It Be?" And it was a moment. And I thought, okay, this is touching something.
Yeah.
This is touching something deep in people. And this song still stands up. And this is not one of the old hymns, but it's now. I mean, this is, for a lot of people, this is way before they were born that
Right.
are listening to this. You're my king, amazing love.
Yeah.
And so reaching back into that is really, is powerful.
I think there's songs that have been written that bookmark significant chapters in people's lives, and
Mm.
even as you say that, I can think back to the time in my life when I was grabbing onto that song and using that song, and there's a sense of kind of thankfulness and
Hmm.
nostalgia, but also just a story of God's faithfulness as you look back over your life, and songs can do that and can bookmark, and
Yeah.
you can remember moments where that was just like an
But
anchor
yeah.
for you, a point of your faith, and
Think,
when
think
that
about, think about Shout to the Lord.
right,
What that did
yeah,
around the earth.
yeah,
Right. It's a marking moment, right, of like in the church. And
yeah,
you go back and play that song now and it feels almost brand new,
right,
you know? And and because it's not, because people know it, but yet
yeah.
it's not sung as much. And
Yeah.
then when you sing it, it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
you know, you
Yes.
know,
Yeah. And that's another one I've seen cropping up in a few places recently, which has been
yeah,
amazing. Chris, I want to be really respectful of your time. I know you've had a busy weekend. I want to ask you two more questions, if that's okay.
yeah.
You mentioned this in your description at the front, but I'm fascinated by the use of emojis as album titles because that causes a tech company a bit of headaches. And how do we catalog that and where do we put that on our website? Tell me about the use of emojis and
Yeah,
that in the
yeah.
album. It's
It's
brilliant.
hard to say, Alexa, play the crown emoji, bird emoji. Yeah, it's caused some problems, but I thought it was musical pieces
Yeah.
basically, and I had these musical pieces that we've always loved to make in the studio, but I've never really put them on a record.
Right.
I made an album called The Maker and the Instrument that was just
Hmm.
all instrumental, but I've never really made this where just put in the album these little pieces of music. And one is like my piano player, he's so good, and backstage he's just playing one day,
Yeah.
just something on the piano, and I'm like, what is I just grabbed my phone and hit record and put it on his piano, and I'm like, what is this? He goes, I don't know, just playing. And it was like heaven. And I was like, and that's one of the emojis. And so
Yeah.
I thought, what do I title this? And I thought, well, Selah, maybe
Yeah.
that's what people would expect
Yeah.
from the Psalms. Or maybe I call it Zamar, which is the Hebrew word for instrumental praise. I thought,
Okay.
oh, that's interesting, these instrumental pieces. But then I thought, I don't know, just had this thought. I was like, oh, the crown, a crown. I'd like to make it a crown. The king is still the king. Everything's this crown. Wait, can I put crowns as these musical pieces? And they're like, so I went to my team. They're like, oh, that's a cool idea, but you can't just put a crown, because if you just put a crown, it doesn't know which crown to play.
Right.
The computer, the algorithms. If you just say, and so if you just hit a crown, which one's it going to play? Then
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, that's true. Then I got to put a crown put a crown in a bird, a crown
Yeah.
in a cross, a crown in a crown in praise hands. It's something that like would just like distinguish each one. But yeah, they're just like musical pieces that kind of connect
Yeah.
the songs.
And it just throws back to that whole imagery. I think you said that at the top, like the imagery in the album, imagery from the album title,
Yeah.
in the album cover, and then even in the titles there. But you've got this kind of like creation digital, creation modern, kind of just juxtaposition between the two is fantastic. I love it.
No,
So
thank
much
you,
fun.
buddy.
I'm going to ask you one more question to end our time, and I want to take us back to where we started the conversation, if that's okay. So the listeners of this podcast are worship leaders around the world that are the faithful guys and girls that are getting on every Sunday morning, leading their communities. They're listening to resources like this and taking songs and taking tools to do their job with excellence. And we have a mission here at MultiTracks that we create resources so that people can focus on what really matters. So in the current climate, in all that you've experienced on tour, with the memorial that you're part of yesterday, what's your encouragement to worship leaders as they lead their communities right now in this unique period of history? And what's your encouragement and your prayer for those guys and girls?
I'm so encouraged. Be encouraged. This is our moment. This is our moment. God is waking up people,
Right.
and people are hungry. People are hungry. I'm talking to, like you heard me earlier, I'm talking to Uber drivers
Yeah.
who I would never dream, are just hungry for God. They're waking. I remember he's like, it just woke me up. They're awakened to like, whoa.
Yeah.
This is a moment where I think we have maybe this is a moment where you have parents, right? That it's like when you tell your kids something and they never listen, then somebody else comes and tells them,
Yeah.
and they go, oh yeah, yeah, and you're like, I've been telling you that for years. This is our leader of worship. This is our worship leader moment of that,
Yeah.
right? It's
It
like
really is.
we've been saying this for years. Now
Yeah.
people are like, oh, I'm listening. Okay, yeah, this is what we've been saying. So walk into that and just know that people are looking to connect, longing to connect. This is stirred in people's soul, a rawness, a sorrow, and also a renewed hope and a renewed boldness. And people, and a lot of people are walking in with questions. A lot of people are walking in for the first time too.
Yeah.
And those people are walking in the first time because they're stirred by
Yeah.
what is happening. So just be bold and proclaim this. God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name above every name. Proclaim that.
Yeah.
Keep proclaiming people that there is a higher name. That's what I would encourage people with.
Chris, thank you so much for your time today. Huge honour for me to get to talk to you. You've had a lasting impact on many people's lives, mine included, both through your model of worship leading, the songs that you've written, and being in the room sometimes when you've led worship, but from a distance just felt like you've been a key part of my spiritual formation. So it's been a huge honour for me to get to meet you and talk to you.
Thank you. And thank you for having the time with you and taking this much time to talk about the music. It means so much to me, and I just want to encourage and say to all the worship leaders, out there, that I'm cheering you on. I'm part of your team. We're all part of the team together.
Yeah.
This is my community. It's always been like for me to lead people to worship God, and just grateful for everybody.
Thank you so much. Chris, God bless. Thank you so much.